My sister betrayed me my whole life and slept with my boyfriend. But at my wedding, I invited the aunt my parents hid for 15 years. And my grandma discovered the truth that destroyed them. $105K in lawsuits and restraining order. I'm 27 years old. I work in digital marketing. And honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened at my wedding a few months ago was so absolutely chaotic that I still can't believe it's real. I mean, I always knew my family was toxic, but I never imagined things would end up in court, restraining orders, and basically cutting ties forever. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid and my older sister was the golden child of the family while I was, you know, the one who always got blamed for everything. I grew up being my family's scapegoat. And when I say it was always my fault, I mean literally everything. My older sister could break something, lose something, make any mess, and somehow I'd end up punished. My parents were a special case. Like, my mom was one of those almond moms obsessed with diets and everyone's weight, and my dad only cared about money and business. The only person in my family who was worth anything was my grandma, my dad's mom, who was sweet and, more real than the rest of those narcissists. But anyway, when I was 12 years old, something happened that basically changed my life forever. My grandma had given my mom a set of crystal bowls that were like a family heirloom, super old and expensive, and my mom adored them because they were like her most prized possession or something. One day I was in my room doing homework, and I hear this huge crash from the kitchen. I run downstairs and my sister is standing there, surrounded by pieces of crystal. She had broken one of the bowls, and I swear I saw the panic on her face. But before I could say anything, she sees me and screams, "Mom, Megan broke your bowl." I tried to stop her, but she pushed me. And I just stood there like, what? I was literally upstairs in my room, but my parents didn't even let me explain. My mom started screaming that I was ungrateful, that I never valued anything. And my dad said something like, "I'm sick of your destructive behavior." What happened? Neck still hurts when I think about it. My parents decided I was so problematic that they sent me to a boarding school. A boarding school. Far from home. I was 12 years old. Can you believe it? They ripped me away from everything I knew, because my sister broke something and lied to them. The school was 3 hours away, and I could only come back during long breaks. The first few months I cried every night. I felt completely abandoned and confused because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. My roommates probably thought I was crazy. My grandma was the only one who visited me regularly and sent me letters, but even she believed my parents' version of why I was there, like that I needed discipline or something. I spent 6 years at that boarding school, and honestly, it was lonely and horrible at first. But eventually I adapted and even made some friends. When it was time for college, my parents insisted I come back home and go to the local university to save money on dorms. I was 18. I needed the financial support because I had nowhere else to get it from. So I agreed, even though every cell in my body told me it was a bad idea. I went back home and, surprise, surprise, I had to share my sister's apartment because my parents said it was more economical. Living with my sister was absolute hell. She was 23 years old at that time, and acted like I was her personal servant. She left her stuff lying around everywhere, never cleaned anything, brought people over at any hour, and if I complained, she'd run to my parents to say I was dramatic and conflictive. But what really destroyed me happened during my last year of high school, right before starting college, at my prom. I was dating this guy, my first real boyfriend, and we'd been together for 8 months. And the night of my prom, he offered to drive me in his car because my parents didn't want to, and I was super excited because I had bought my dress with money I'd saved working summers. In the day of prom, I got home early to get ready. And when I entered the apartment, I heard weird noises from my sister's room. Something in my stomach churned, like I already knew something was wrong. I opened the door, because technically I also lived there and had never needed to knock before. And there they were, my sister and my boyfriend, in her bed. And honestly, I don't need to give more details because it still makes me sick to remember it. She had the audacity to scream, "Get out of here, don't you know how to knock?" As if I was the one invading her privacy and not her the one sleeping with my boyfriend. He just stood there like an idiot, didn't even try to explain or apologize, just grabbed his clothes and ran out. I left the apartment that night with a suitcase, called a friend from school who lived in another city 2 hours away, and left. I sent a text to my parents saying I was leaving and wouldn't come back, and my mom responded something like, "Always so dramatic." Your sister? Told me you invented those lies because you're jealous of her relationship. I mean, seriously? My dad didn't even respond. I stayed with my friend that summer, got a job as a waitress, and in August I moved to a different city where I had applied to transfer to another university. I used student loans to pay for everything, cut contact with my family except my grandma who kept sending me worried messages, and basically rebuilt my life from scratch. The next few years were hard but liberating. You know what I mean? I finished my degree, got a decent job in marketing, started therapy because I clearly had a lot to process, and slowly realized that my family had never valued me. My sister would send me occasional messages like, "Hi, little sister, I miss you," as if nothing had happened, and I ignored them all. My parents never apologized or admitted they'd handled everything horribly. They just acted like I was the rebel who had abandoned the family for being immature. Fast forward 4 years after I left. I met someone at work. We became friends first, started dating, and he turned out to be the love of my life. I don't know. It sounds corny, but it's true. He knew my whole family story, supported me completely, and never pressured me to reconcile with my family if I didn't want to. After 2 years together, we got engaged. And honestly, it was the happiest moment of my life. His family welcomed me with open arms. His mom was amazing, helping me with wedding plans. And for the first time, I felt what it was like to have a real family. We decided to have the wedding in our city, where we lived, because we had friends here and my fiancé's family was also nearby. When I started making the guest list, I intentionally left out my sister. I invited my parents because, I don't know, part of me still had that silly hope that maybe they could behave like normal parents for one day, and I invited my grandma because she had always been good to me even though she didn't know the whole truth. But my sister, no way. The reason was obvious, right? She had slept with my boyfriend, never apologized, and kept acting on social media like she was the victim somehow. 2 months before the wedding, my mom calls me and basically tells me she noticed my sister isn't on the guest list and that's unacceptable. I explained calmly. Mom, she slept with my boyfriend, made my life miserable, and it's my wedding. I have the right to invite whoever I want. And my mom starts with her classic manipulation, saying I'm resentful. That was years ago. That family is family, blah, blah, blah. Then she threatens me, says if your sister isn't invited, none of us will go, not your father, not me, not your grandma. That broke my heart because I wanted my grandma to be there. She was the only one I really cared about. But at the same time, I wasn't going to let my mom manipulate me at my own wedding. I told her, fine, don't come then, and hung up. My fiancé found me crying in the living room, and when I told him what happened, he got so angry. He started saying my family didn't deserve to be at our wedding anyway. His mom, my future mother-in-law, also found out and supported me completely, said she and my fiancé's family would be my family that day. But then I had an idea. And I don't know if it was revenge or justice or what, but I decided to invite someone my parents really didn't want to see. My dad has a sister, my aunt, who had been excluded from the family for 15 years. I barely remembered her from when I was a kid, but I knew there had been some kind of huge drama and that my parents had cut her off completely. I never knew the real details because every time I asked as a child, they told me she had done terrible things and we shouldn't talk about her. I decided to look her up on social media, found her, and sent her a message explaining who I was and asking if we could meet up. My aunt responded super quickly, and we agreed to meet at a cafe, near where she lived, an hour from my city. When I saw her, I immediately felt a weird connection. She had the same energy as my grandma, sweet but real. We sat down and she started telling me her version of what had happened years ago, and honestly, I was shocked. Basically, my dad and mom had lied to the whole family about her. They made up stories that she had stolen money from the family business, that she had tried to seduce someone's husband, that she had talked badly about my grandma, all lies to isolate her, because she had confronted my dad about his shady business practices. My aunt showed me old messages, emails, even recordings she had kept of conversations where my parents admitted they were lying, but that they needed to get her out of the way because she knew too much. She had tried to contact my grandma many times over the years, but my parents intercepted the messages and told my grandma that my aunt was harassing her. It was the same pattern they had used with me, you know? Isolate, lie, manipulate. I told her my whole story, about the bowl, the boarding school, my sister and my ex-boyfriend, everything, and she just shook her head yeah, That sounds exactly like something they would do. I asked her if she'd want to come to my wedding, and she got really excited, said it would be an honor, and that she really wanted to get to know me better and be in my life. I warned her it would probably cause drama because my parents would be there, though I didn't know if they'd actually come after their threat, but she said she didn't care, that it was time someone confronted them. I sent the formal invitation, updated the list, and waited to see what would happen. A week before the wedding, my mom calls me again, like all sweet, and says we've decided to go to your wedding. All of us, including your sister, because we love you and want to be there on your special day. I knew it was pure manipulation. Probably my sister pressured her, or they wanted to avoid the scandal of not going. But I didn't care anymore. I told them, "Great. See you there," and didn't mention anything about my aunt. I wanted it to be a surprise. And yes, okay, I admit part of me wanted to see their faces when they saw her. The wedding day arrived, and honestly, I was nervous. Not about getting married because I was super sure about that, but about all the potential family drama. The ceremony was at a beautiful venue with gardens, and when I arrived and was getting ready in the bridal room, my mother-in-law came and told me, "Your aunt already arrived and she's with your grandma. They're talking." My heart started beating fast like, oh no, what's happening? But my mother-in-law calmed me down and said they're fine. Just talking. Turns out my grandma saw my aunt and at first was confused, but my aunt immediately approached her and explained that I had invited her. They started talking, and my aunt showed her some of the evidence she had about my parents' lies. My grandma is smart, she's always been smart, and basically started connecting the dots about all the suspicious things my parents had said over the years. By the time the ceremony started, my grandma was livid with my parents but trying to keep her composure for me. The ceremony was perfect. Honestly magical. My husband looked amazing, and I was so happy that for a moment I forgot all the drama. My parents were sitting in the back with my sister, and I could see their faces when they noticed my aunt sitting in the front row next to my grandma. My dad turned red. Like I could see the vein in his neck from where I was, and my mom looked like she had seen a ghost. My sister was too busy taking selfies to notice at first. The reception started well. Delicious food, good music, everyone dancing and having a good time. My aunt and grandma were sitting together talking intensely, reconnecting after so many years, and seeing them like that filled me with joy. But then my dad approached their table, and I could see from where I was that he was saying something aggressive. My husband and I approached just as my dad was yelling, "How dare you come here after everything you did? You have no shame." My aunt stayed calm, super calm, and told him I didn't do anything, and you know it. You've lied to the whole family for years. My grandma intervened and told my dad to shut up, that she already knew the truth and was ashamed of him. That made my dad turn to me, and he yelled at me in front of everyone, "This is your fault. You've always been ungrateful. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. Inviting this woman to your wedding." He called his own sister. "This woman, can you believe it?" I was shaking, but my husband stood between us and told him, "You need to leave now. This is our day, and I'm not going to let you talk to my wife like that." My mom started crying dramatically, saying we were terrible children, that how could we treat them like this after everything they had sacrificed. My sister joined in, screaming that I had always been jealous of her, and that this was my twisted revenge. We had to call security to escort them out, and honestly it was humiliating but also strangely liberating to see those manipulators being literally removed from my life. After they left, the party continued and it was amazing. My grandma hugged me crying, apologizing for having believed my parents' lies all these years, saying she should have investigated more when they sent me to boarding school. I told her it wasn't her fault, that they were experts at manipulating. My aunt was also crying, happy to be back in the family and to have finally met me. The rest of the night was perfect. We danced until late, and I felt lighter than ever. I thought that was the end of the drama. But oh no, my sister couldn't leave things like that. The next day, she did a live on Instagram, like a live broadcast, where she told her completely false version of what had happened. She said, I had excluded her from my wedding out of jealousy, that I had made up stories about her to look good, that I had manipulated our grandma against our parents, that I was a horrible and ungrateful daughter. She put my parents on the live too, and they backed up every lie. The video went viral among her followers. She had like 15,000 at that time, and I started receiving hate messages from people I didn't know. My sister-in-law, my husband's sister, sent me screenshots of the live and suggested I consult with a lawyer because what my sister was saying was clearly defamation. I was emotionally exhausted. I had just gotten married. I was trying to start my honeymoon, but I knew she was right. I couldn't let my sister spread lies about me without consequences. I hired a lawyer specializing in defamation, showed him the video, gave him context of the whole situation, and he said we had a solid case. My aunt also decided to take legal action against my parents. After talking with my grandma and me, she realized that the damage they had caused her for 15 years deserved justice. She hired her own lawyer and filed a lawsuit for defamation, manipulation, and mental harassment, basically. She had all the evidence saved from years ago, the messages, the recordings, testimonies from people my parents had used to isolate her. The next few months were intense, like meetings with lawyers, depositions, gathering evidence. My sister initially laughed when she received the court papers, posted on social media that I was so pathetic I was suing her for telling the truth. But her lawyer probably told her she was in serious trouble because eventually she deleted the live and all her posts about me. But it was too late. We had everything captured. The case against my sister was first. In court, my lawyer presented the video of the live, testimonies from people who were at the wedding and saw what really happened. Text messages where my sister admitted to having done horrible things to me in the past. He even found old messages where she bragged to a friend about sleeping with my boyfriend to hurt me. My sister tried to say it was all lies, that I had manipulated the evidence, but the judge didn't believe her at all. When they asked her directly if she had slept with my ex-boyfriend, she stuttered and finally admitted yes, but that I was exaggerating it. The court ruled in my favor. My sister had to pay me like $25,000 in damages, which I know she didn't have because she lived off my parents' money. And she had to make a public apology on all her social media admitting she had lied. She also had to permanently delete any content related to me. Seeing that apology posted was, I don't know, vindicating but also sad because I knew she didn't really mean it. My aunt's case against my parents took a little longer because it was more complex, but eventually it also went to trial. My aunt presented 15 years of evidence of manipulation, lies, intentional isolation, and the impact it had on her mental health and relationships. My grandma testified in favor of my aunt, explaining how my parents had deceived her all those years. I also testified about my own experience of being the scapegoat and how that helped me understand my parents' behavior pattern. My parents tried to defend themselves, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that they only wanted to protect the family. But the judge saw through their lies. The court ruled in favor of my aunt, ordered my parents to pay compensatory damages in the amount of like $80,000, and gave them a restraining order where they couldn't contact my aunt in any way. My grandma was in court that day, and when the verdict was read, she clapped, literally clapped, in court. After both cases, my grandma made a huge decision. She called her lawyers and completely changed her will. She removed my parents as beneficiaries and left everything divided between my aunt and me. When my parents found out, they tried to contact her, but she told them she didn't want anything to do with them anymore, that they had disappointed her beyond forgiveness. She moved in with my aunt to a house they bought together, and now they live there happily. They garden together and have a book club with the neighbors. I also obtained a restraining order against my parents and my sister. They couldn't approach me, contact me, or talk about me on social media. The peace I felt when those papers were approved was indescribable. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control over who was in my space and who wasn't. Now, almost a year after the wedding, my life is completely different. I see my grandma and my aunt regularly. We have dinner together every 2 weeks, and they're like the grandmas I always wanted to have. My husband and I are building our life together, without the toxic weight of my biological family. His family treats me like a daughter and sister, and I finally understand what it feels like to be part of a real family. Do I regret how everything unfolded? Honestly, no. Part of me wishes my parents had been different, that they had been capable of loving and supporting their daughters equally, but I can't change who they are. What I could change was my situation, and taking legal action was necessary to establish final boundaries and consequences. My sister still lives with my parents, according to what I heard from mutual friends, probably still blaming me for everything, and honestly, I hope someday she sees the truth too, but that's not my responsibility. Last week, my grandma asked me if I would ever consider forgiving my parents if they genuinely apologized. I told her I didn't know, that maybe with a lot of time and therapy on their part, but that honestly I didn't see it happening. She nodded and said she understood, that she hadn't forgiven them either. And That's enough for now. I have my husband. I have my grandma and my aunt. I have my incredible in-laws. And I have my peace. Everything else is just noise I left behind.